Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about, I haven't quite figured out what to call these sessions yet, but maybe something like Let's Talk Travel or something like that. But one of the questions that I get a lot and I see online a lot is what are the requirements to get into a particular country? And uh, we're in the age where we like to ask people how to do things, which is okay. But there's some things that we as travelers have to do ourselves, right? So, for example, when it comes to document requirements to get into a country, don't ask anyone what that is because everyone is different. And I say everyone is different because to get your particular documents that you need for a particular country, and I made some notes, so I'll just go from my notes just to make sure I cover everything I needed to cover. So entry requirements are based on your citizenship. That means a passport that you hold. Now, some people hold two passports, and I'll try to address that at the end or address that during the broadcast. So there's citizenship, there's where you're going, where you're coming from, and if you're transiting any countries to get to that particular location, and also how long you're going to stay. So let's take the first thing, citizenship. When you talk about citizenship, that means the passport you're holding. So, for example, if you're a US citizen, which means you have a US passport, and you can go to most countries without applying for a visa before you get there. So they do what's called visa on arrival. So when you get to the country, the immigration officer process you. Processing usually mean you either fill out an application, a piece of paper on the airplane, or if you don't fill a piece of paper, when you get to the airport, they'll ask you, well, where are you going? How long are you staying? Who are you staying with? Do you have enough money to take care of yourself while you're here? And have you booked a hotel? And they could ask you for the hotel reservation. They could also ask you for your ticket for you to leave. Some people don't do return tickets, which is fine, but as long as you have a ticket for onward journey. So let's say you go to London and you need a ticket for onward journey because you're not a citizen of that country. You don't have the legal right to work in that country. So you can't stay there forever. You can only stay up to a certain duration. Typically, some countries have 2 weeks, 1 month, 6 months, 90 days. Usually 90 days, so probably 6 months might actually be the tops that you can stay in a country without uh, having, I guess, on a tourist visa. Um, I'm only talking about tourist visa because there's business visas, which is a whole other thing. That means you have the right to work in that country for a specific period of time for a specific company. But so your citizenship is important. Now, some people have dual citizenship. So what does that mean? That means that I have a visa, I'm sorry, I have a passport for country A, let's say United States, and then I also have a passport for country B, let's say United Kingdom. So what some people do is when they're returning home to United, if they're in the US and going to the UK, they will use the UK passport for entry into the UK because they're returning home. And the requirements are actually different because now they don't have to fill in the forms out. They just go to a specific line and they just get welcome home stamp, you're in. Now, when they're coming back to the US, they will use a US passport because the same thing would happen again. No questions asked, welcome home, stamp back in. Problem with using this is that the countries can't keep track of you because they know that you left the country, the United States, with the US passport, but they don't have any record of well, they know where you went, but that country doesn't have a record that you entered using a US passport because to that country you're a returning citizen. So it creates problems in the end. But people do it because it's allowed. You're not breaking the law, it's allowed. Because you are returning citizenship. Now, not every country has dual citizenship arrangements. Um, so you always have to check that. So we talk about the passports. Destination. some countries do require specific you have to apply for the visa online or in person. You have to like send your passport to the consulate if you have a consulate in your or an embassy in your particular place where you live. And then in terms of the destination, you may need to get some kind of health related documentation, whether you have to get a malaria shot or yellow fever shot or something like that. Now, these are pretty important because you normally have to get them way beforehand because some of them takes a little while to take effect. Now, countries like Ghana, which requires a yellow fever shot, when you go in, if you don't have a yellow fever shot, they're ready there with a needle to give you one immediately because you can't enter without it. It's interesting because it takes 2 weeks for the shot to take effect, so you really need to get it before you go. The good thing is that it lasts quite a while and you get a little yellow card. You can write all your vaccination information on there. The destination is important. Departure country. Depending on where you're coming from, you may or may not need a particular shot or a particular visa to enter another country. It's just based on the relationship that the countries have with each other and what they've set up in the back end. This is something that's pre-done and you really have no control over that. It just depends on where you're going. The other one is the country you're transiting. Now, this is extremely important if you're like going from, I'll give you 2 examples. A friend of mine is from the UK. They were going to Colombia, but they decided that they wanted to go to Brazil first and then go to Colombia. So then, if you go from Brazil to Colombia, you actually need to get I think it's a yellow fever shot. And now if you go from the US to Colombia, you don't. It's because you came through Brazil is why you need one. It's just how the requirements are for getting into the particular country. So make sure you check that. Well, how do I check? Oh, the other thing is the duration, right? So as a tourist, you can only stay, I think I mentioned you can stay, depends. Some places will give you 1 or 2 days. You may get to be 6 months, 3 months, 90 days, just depends on what you're coming in to do. Usually for a tourist visa, they'll give you like, anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months, typically. Don't overstay your visas because if you do, then when you're leaving, you may get in trouble. Or when you try to apply for a visa again, i.e., you return to that country, they may deny you entry because you violated the initial visa that you received. Now, how do you figure all this stuff out, right? If you're a US citizen, you go to travel.state.gov and search for the country that you're going to, and it'll tell you all the requirements. Look for entry requirements, and it'll tell you all the requirements that you need for that particular country. The other way you can do it is if you go to IATAtravelcenter.com, I think it is. This is a website I set up by IATA, which is an organization that's set up for air travel for all the airlines. And they're based in Montreal, I think. And you can go to that website, put in all the information. They do ask you for a lot of personal information, but they need it so they could tell you what you need to enter that particular country. There's the same information that everybody accesses, so you're not getting a different information because you go to a different source. The other place you can go is your airline's website. When you go on your airline's website, they have the similar thing. It feeds in. The system is called Thematic, and it feeds into that system. Feeds into what the airline information is reading, so you can get the same information from there. Almost all the airlines have it. They actually pay for it. So every time you hit it, there's a cost, but the cost makes sense because it makes you a better traveler. And when the airline take you from A to B and you don't have the right visa, they have to take you back to A and they also get fined, typically about $10,000. So, and you'd be amazed at how many people show up at the airport that doesn't have the correct documentation and they have to turn them away because people just don't check because they say they don't know. One of the ones that get on people's nerves is Australia because most Americans don't think they need a visa for Australia, and they do. The good thing is that you can apply for it online. It's about 20 Australian dollars or something like that, and it's very quick. But not everywhere is like that. Some places you can do visas, like if you're going to Turkey, you can actually do the visa on arrival. When you go to, I think that Dubai, the visa is also on arrival as well. When you go to Vietnam, you can do the visa on arrival, or you can do the visa online, or you can go to an embassy. So every country is quite different. So don't ask your friends because your friends don't know. Your friends are going to tell you, oh, when I went 10 years ago, this is what it was. Or when I went last week, this is what it was. But you don't know their background and you don't know anything about what they did and all that kind of stuff. So you know about you. So when you need to go somewhere, you go to the airline's website. They have a thing on international travel. That's what you're going to do. Or you go to the embassy for the country that you're going to, or go, if you're in the US, you go to travel.state.gov. The Canada has a similar thing like travel.state.gov. So does the United Kingdom. So does Australia. Most countries have something that will tell their citizens what is needed for them to go to a particular country. So I hope this answers the questions. I think I covered everything. Yes. So I hope this answers the visa questions that a lot of people do have. And it's only because they just don't take the time to figure it out. You can always go buy the ticket online. The airlines won't stop you from buying the ticket. Funny, weird story. I was going to Dubai, and of course, I love to do different ridings and stop in different countries and things like that. So on my way to Dubai, I was fine. I stopped in Jeddah, and I just transited Jeddah, so I didn't need any documentation. You actually do need a visa for Saudi Arabia, which you can apply for online. It's about $148, and you get it like almost immediately when you apply, unless there's a problem. Now, coming back though, I was still transiting, so no visa necessary, but I was transiting through I think is Medina, which is one of the holy places in Saudi, where at the time, I think this has changed a little bit now. At the time, if you're not a Muslim, you cannot transit through that country. So basically, the ticket I had, it was going to go from to that particular city. It was going to go from Dubai to, I think it's Medina, the place is, and then from there to Riyadh, and then Riyadh to JFK. The problem was the flight from in the flight from Medina to Riyadh is domestic. In order to get to the domestic terminal, you have to enter Saudi, and that's where you need the visa for because you're entering the country. And when you enter, because you have to go from the international terminal to the domestic terminal, you have to enter. Plus, for that particular city, at the time, you needed to be a Muslim. The rules, the Saudi rules are changing. I went to Riyadh and I decided to apply for the visa online. And at some point, I'll do a thing about traveling to Riyadh. But just make sure you check the visa requirements. So what happened was I get to the airport in Dubai, and I because I wanted to fly, I think there's Saudi 787, which goes to Medina from Dubai. And so I get to the airport, I'm all ready to check in, and I get up to the counter, and she goes, "You can't travel today." And I go, "Why not?" She goes, "Because you don't have a visa." I said, "Well, I didn't realize I need a visa because I'm only transiting." She goes, "No, you need a visa." Now, this was bought through Priceline. Priceline should never have sold me that ticket with that type of routing in it. So in the back end, they didn't have the systems that said, "Hey, a visa is required for here. This is a domestic. You're doing a domestic." They were trying to give me a better fare, but they didn't notify me that anything like that was needed. And because I was transiting, I didn't think anything was needed either. So when I get to the airport, they were like, no, you can't travel. So I go up to the office and they were not very helpful. And they were just sitting there and I'm like, well, can I just get on the nonstop then from Dubai to Riyadh? And they were like, no, you can't do that. And they were just stalling the entire time. Then they were like, I had to call Priceline. When I called Priceline, Priceline couldn't help me. They gave me all kinds of runarounds about it's not their fault and blah, blah, blah. And I had a friend check and it was their fault. They should have not have sold me that ticket in the first place. And so I had to end up buying a ticket because that ticket couldn't be used and they wouldn't reroute me. And all they had to do was put me on a nonstop flight from Riyadh, from Dubai to Riyadh, because I already had the Riyadh to JFK portion, and they decided they weren't going to do that, and they dilly-dallied until the flight left. And between that and calling Preston, and the Preston, there was no help either. So this is kind of one of the reasons why I don't really buy tickets from online travel agencies, because when you have a problem and you call them, they're no help. And when I got back home, so I bought a ticket on what's the name of that other airline now? The local airline for Bahrain, Gulf Air. So I bought a ticket on Gulf Air and I did Dubai to Bahrain, and then I do Bahrain to London, and then I did London to JFK. It's a ticket that I had to buy. And so when I came back, I sent a note to Priceline, they ignored me. And I sent another note, and the first note I'd copied in like, the VP of corporate communication, the VP of, because I looked them up online, the VP of customer relations and the CEO of the company and the customer service people. They ignored me, and then I replied again and say, hey, what's going on? So then they called me actually, and they never admitted that they were wrong, but they said that I said, I'm not looking for anything from you. All I want is the money that I spent that I shouldn't have. That's all I want back. And so then they decided they were going to give me the money for the ticket that I bought, and they were going to close the case, but they never admitted they were wrong. But they did pay. So I say this to just be careful what you buy. Sometimes the cheap tickets aren't really what you're looking for. And always check the visa requirements, even if the systems that you're buying it from haven't told you that you need one. So that's all I have for today. This is Kerwin at PassRider.com, cruising.com, and Frequent Traveler 101. Have a great trip. Check those visa requirements before you travel. Take care.